I still remember the first time I saw her, standing right there in my living room. Her name was Leah, my son's fiancée. She smiled at me, soft, polite, like any young woman trying to make a good impression. But when she looked up when her eyes met mine, something inside me froze. I don't know if it was her eyes, or the way she tilted her head when she spoke, but for a moment, it felt like time stopped, because I had seen that face before. I didn't say anything, not right away. I just stood there, pretending to smile, pretending I wasn't shaking inside. My son, Marcus, was talking about how they met in college, how she made him laugh, how he knew she was the one. And I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But all I could think about was that face, those same brown eyes, that same little scar above her eyebrow, the same one she had. That night, after they left, I sat in the dark, just staring at nothing. The air felt heavy, the house quiet. And I kept asking myself, is it possible? No, it can't be. She's gone. She's been gone for 30 years. But my heart wouldn't let it go. It kept whispering, what if? You see, my husband, David, he wasn't always the man I thought he was. Back then, we looked perfect from the outside, church on Sundays, family dinners, smiles in pictures. But behind closed doors, there were cracks, secrets, things I chose not to see. And now, standing in front of me, was a young woman who looked exactly like the ghost of my past. That night I opened an old wooden box I hadn't touched in decades. Inside were photographs, faded, curled at the edges. Our wedding day. Marcus as a baby. And then, one picture that made my hands tremble. It was her, that other woman, the one who almost destroyed my marriage, the one David swore he never saw again. And she looked just like Leah. I remember whispering to myself, Lord, what have you brought back into my house? That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a coincidence. Something buried deep in my past was coming back to face me. And it was wearing my son's fiancée's smile. I held that photograph in my hands for a long time. Too long. The paper felt cold, like the memory it carried. And even after all these years, I still remembered her name. Angela. Angela was beautiful. Not in a loud, showy way, but quiet, graceful, dangerous. The kind of woman who walks into a room, and suddenly the air feels different. And David, my husband, he noticed her long before I did. It was 1989. We were still young, still pretending that love could fix everything. He was working late nights at the firm back then. Always had an excuse. Always had a reason to stay just one more hour. I remember one night I called the office, and a woman answered. Her voice soft, smooth, the kind that slides right under your skin. When I asked for David, she said, he just stepped out, Mrs. Walker. And that's when I knew. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. I didn't confront him right away. No, I waited. I waited for proof. Because love, when it's deep, makes you doubt yourself before you doubt them. Then one evening, he came home smelling different. Not like the cologne I bought him. Not like the office. It was her perfume. Light, floral, sweet, just like the woman in that photograph. I remember sitting on our bed, holding that same photo I found again tonight. It was taken at one of his company parties. She was standing right next to him, smiling. like she belonged there. And when I looked closer, I saw his hand resting gently on her back. Not accidental. Not friendly. Intimate. That was the night something in me broke. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet shatter deep inside my chest. And I told myself, I would never let another woman take what's mine. But looking at Leah now, all these years later, I'm starting to wonder if I ever really stopped that from happening. Because what if the past never left? What if it just grew up, put on a white dress, and came back to marry my son? Soft pause. I couldn't sleep that night. That photograph sat on my nightstand staring at me, and I swear her eyes in that picture looked alive, as if she knew she'd return. Dinner that night was quiet. Too quiet. Marcus sat across from me, smiling full of life, full of love. And beside him sat Leah, the girl with my past written all over her face. Every time she spoke, I heard her Angela. The tone, the rhythm, even the laughter. It was like someone pressed play on a memory I'd buried long ago. I tried to eat. Fork to plate, plate to mouth. Pretend everything was fine. But my hands, they wouldn't stop trembling. Leah noticed. She leaned forward, eyes soft, voice gentle. "Are you okay, Mrs. Walker?" I nodded, forced a smile. "Yes, dear. Just a little tired." "Tired," that's what I said. But what I meant was tired of lies, tired of pretending the past doesn't breathe in this room. Marcus looked so proud of her. He told me how she wanted to start a non-profit, how she cared for kids without families. And when she said, "I've always wondered what it's like to grow up without a father," I swear my heart stopped. Her voice cracked just a little. And something inside me whispered, she doesn't know. After dinner, they helped me clear the table. Leah was humming a soft tune I hadn't heard in decades. It was Angela's song. The same one she used to hum in David's office when she thought no one was listening. I stood there, holding a dish, frozen in place, while my son's fiancée washed the past off our plates. Later, when they left, I sat by the window, watching their car disappear down the street, the taillights fading into the dark. And I whispered, "God, if this is what I think it is, please give me the strength to face it." Because deep down, I already knew. I just didn't want to believe it. Not yet. Not until the truth knocked on my door. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief can play tricks on the mind. But the truth doesn't stay quiet for long. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, heart racing. I picked up my phone, typed Leah's full name into a search bar, then stopped. My hands were shaking too much. It felt wrong, like betrayal. But curiosity, no, fear, pushed me forward. I searched again. And there it was, a last name I hadn't seen in 30 years. Matthews. Angela Matthews. The name hit me like thunder. The air left my chest. It was her. The same last name. I whispered it out loud. Leah. Matthews. Then softly, "Dear God." My mind went back to David. The night we said our last real words. He had packed a small suitcase. Didn't say where he was going. Just looked at me. Eyes tired, voice low. "I made a mistake, Rose." That's all he said. No details, no apology that could fix it. And I remember answering, "No, David, you made a choice." He turned away. And that was the last time I saw him alive. He died 2 years later. Heart attack. Alone. And part of me never cried for him, not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't know how to. Now, decades later, his ghost was back, wearing our son's engagement ring. I couldn't breathe. The walls felt smaller, the air heavy. What if Leah never knew who her father was? What if Marcus didn't either? What if I had spent all these years hating a man, while his secret child was about to become my daughter-in-law? I pressed my palms to my face. Tears, silent and slow. And I whispered, "Lord, please don't let this be true." But deep down, the truth had already settled in. And it wasn't going anywhere. Leah came by the next afternoon. She said she wanted to spend some girl time with me. Just the two of us. I tried to smile, tried to act normal. But every time I looked at her face, I saw Angela's shadow looking back at me. We sat in the kitchen, teacups between us. The sunlight spilling across the table, too bright for the kind of truth that lived in that room. She was talking, laughing. Really, about wedding plans, colors, dresses, flowers. Her joy filled the space. But my heart, it was drowning in silence. Then she said something. Something small, but sharp. She said, "You know, I never really knew my father." And my breath caught. I asked softly, "Oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry. Do you know anything about him?" She shook her head. "Not really. My mom, she didn't like to talk about him. She said he was married, that it was complicated." My hands went cold. The room tilted just a little. I forced my lips to move. "What was your mother's name, Leah?" She smiled, not knowing what that name would do to me. "Angela," she said. "Angela Matthews." Everything inside me went still. The clock ticked. The kettle whistled. But I couldn't move. I whispered, barely breathing, "That's a beautiful name." She smiled again, completely unaware that she had just opened a wound I had spent 30 years trying to close. She reached across the table, touched my hand. "You know, I always wished I had a mother-in-law like you. Someone warm. Someone who feels like home." I wanted to hold her hand, but my fingers were trembling. Because in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't her fault. She was innocent, a piece of a broken story that started long before her. When she left, I stayed at the table, her teacup still warm, her lipstick faint on the rim. And I said quietly, "Lord, how do I love her without breaking my son's heart?" Because now, I wasn't just holding a secret. I was holding a future. One that could fall apart with a single word. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt heavy. Like every wall remembered what I was trying to forget. I sat in bed, lights off, heart full. And I thought about David. For years, I blamed him for everything. For the lies. For the loneliness. For turning my love into silence. But as I stared into the dark, something inside me shifted. Maybe he wasn't the only one who ran away. Maybe I did too, just in a quieter way. I thought about Angela, her smile, the softness in her voice. I used to hate her, but hate is heavy, and I've carried it too long. She was young, just like I was once. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she believed his promises, the same ones I once did. And now her daughter, that innocent girl, was sitting in my kitchen, dreaming about a wedding she didn't know was built on our past mistakes. Tears came, slow and quiet. Not out of anger this time, but out of release. Because after all these years, I finally realized forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. It's saying I'm done letting it own me. I whispered into the stillness, "David, I forgive you." My voice cracked. The air trembled, and for a moment, I swear I felt him there. Just a shadow, just a breath. "Angela, I forgive you too." The room was silent again, but lighter, like something invisible had lifted off my chest. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel alone. Because maybe forgiveness isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about setting yourself free from the ghost that's been holding your heart hostage. And as sleep finally found me, I thought maybe tomorrow I'll learn how to love her, not as a reminder of the past, but as the bridge to peace I never thought I'd find. The house was full again. Laughter, voices, footsteps. The sound of a wedding being born. Marcus and Leah were choosing colors ivory and gold. He asked me what I thought. I just smiled and said, "It's beautiful, baby. Just beautiful." But inside, my heart whispered, "Can I really do this?" Leah came to me with a small box of fabric samples. "Mrs. Walker," she said softly, "I was hoping you could help me choose my dress." Her eyes, so full of trust, so unaware of the truth that tied us together. For a moment, I almost said it. I almost told her everything. But something Grace maybe stopped me. Instead, I took her hand and said, "Of course, sweetheart. Let's find you something that makes you shine." As she held a piece of lace against her skin, I caught my breath. The light hit her face just right. And for the first time, I didn't see Angela. I saw Leah. Just Leah. A woman with her own story, her own dreams, not the shadow of my pain. We spent hours together laughing, talking, sharing little secrets about love and marriage. She told me about her childhood, how her mother used to hum while cooking, how she loved the smell of lavender. It made me smile, because that's exactly how I remembered Angela too. But this time, it didn't hurt. It felt gentle, like a memory finally softening after years of cutting too deep. That evening, as I walked her to her car, she hugged me tight, warm, and she said, "You remind me of my mom sometimes. She would have liked you." My throat closed, my eyes burned, but I smiled and whispered, "I think I would have liked her too." When the car drove away, I stood there under the porch light. The night breeze brushed against my face, and for the first time in forever, I felt peace, not pain. Maybe this was what forgiveness looked like. Not forgetting, but choosing love anyway. Stared at that photograph for hours, my hands shaking, my heart whispering things I didn't want to hear. It was him. And her. Together. My husband. And her mother. Before I ever came into the picture, the woman who'd become my son's fiancée's mother. The circle I never saw had been there all along. I sat there frozen. Like time itself stopped to watch me fall apart. I thought about every smile he gave me, every lie he told without words, every time he touched my hand and said, "You're my only one." Maybe he believed it once, or maybe I just needed to believe it for both of us. I felt anger, sharp and heavy. Then confusion. Then a strange kind of sorrow. Because the girl my son loved She carried pieces of a story neither of them knew. I could have destroyed everything that night, told the truth, shattered the peace. But instead, I sat in silence, listening to the sound of my own breathing, counting every second that tore my heart open. When my son came home, he smiled, so full of life, so sure of love, and I just couldn't take that away from him. So I folded the photograph, slipped it into the old box, and whispered to the past, "You've done enough." That night I didn't sleep. I just kept hearing my husband's voice and her laughter, mixed together, fading into memory. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be spoken. Sometimes it just sits beside you, quietly, until your heart decides what to do with it. Days turned into weeks, and the photograph stayed hidden, like a ghost breathing inside that old wooden box. Every morning I told myself, not today. Not today to open the wound. Not today to break my son's heart. But silence has a way of talking. It whispers in the quiet moments, at the dinner table, in the laughter that doesn't sound the same anymore. It asks questions that no one dares to answer. One evening my son came to visit, alone. He looked tired, a little lost. He said, "Mom, she reminds me of you sometimes, the way you smile, the way you pause before speaking." And my heart stopped for a moment. I wanted to tell him, to say, "Baby, you have no idea how close our lives have been tangled." But instead I just smiled, because how could I break something that was still growing? He talked about the future, a little house, a garden, maybe children. And I saw his father's eyes in him, those same warm, stubborn eyes that once fooled me, and yet made me believe in love again. When he left that night, I sat by the window for hours. The moonlight touched the corner of that box, like it was reminding me. Truth never really hides. I whispered to myself, if silence is the only kindness I can give, then I'll give it. Tears came slow, but peaceful this time. Because maybe forgiveness doesn't always mean speaking. Sometimes it means letting go. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt light. Not because the pain was gone, but because I'd finally stopped fighting it. The years kept moving, softly, like a slow song playing in another room. My son got married. They built a life full of laughter, of little moments that matter. And every time I looked at them, I saw traces of the past, woven into something new, something beautiful. The photograph stayed where it was. I never burned it, never threw it away. Because some truths don't need to disappear, they just need to rest. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea. The air would be still, and I'd talk to him, my husband, like he could still hear me. I'd say, "You hurt me, you fool." Then I'd laugh through tears, because after all this time, the hurt had softened into something else. Maybe love doesn't end when people fail. Maybe it just changes shape, becomes forgiveness. One evening, my daughter-in-law, his fiancée, now his wife, sat beside me. She said, "Mom, I always felt like we were connected somehow, even before I met your son." And I smiled, my eyes warm and heavy. I just said, "Maybe souls recognize each other, sweetheart, long before we do." She never knew what those words meant. And she didn't have to. Because forgiveness isn't about telling the story. It's about releasing it, letting it float away, like dust in the sunlight. I closed my eyes that night and whispered one last time, I forgive you. And I forgive myself for holding on so long. Then I slept, peaceful. The kind of peace that comes only after you've faced every ghost and decided to love anyway.